Riding a Transmetro train in and out of the capital can be such a life-changing experience. Who could resist the ever-joyous and patient train conductors, the loyally rising ticket prices, and constant jerking motion of the ancient, antiquated, vessel as one fears for their life? It's a thrill.
What first attracted me to team-based learning is that I was very frustrated with the number of students that were dropping out of university preparation. Myself and my tutors were putting an enormous amount of effort and enthusiasm into trying to teach them about social sciences, but we're still having a large attrition rate. I suggested a number of changes that we could make to the entire program. There wasn't a lot of support for those. They were quite major structural changes. And then one of my colleagues went to a bridging conference and came back talking about this team-based learning. And I thought, well, let's give it a try. At least let's try it in social sciences. We've called these assignments TAG assignments, and TAG stands for Tutorial Assignment Groups, because I thought of that notion of tag, the game that children play. It has this very individual but social dynamic to it. The criteria that we use to form the tag groups is based on things like age. We put an eldest person in one of the groups, a youngest person in one of the groups. Then we get people who speak more than one language, so you get the sort of cultural or ethnic diversity spread amongst the groups. Other things such as, are you the first member in your family to come to university, or are you maybe the last? So you'll have a different cultural capital that you're bringing into the group. And by having these mixed dynamics, it creates different strengths and different weaknesses can come out in the group, and people can support each other from different perspectives.
First it was very quiet, everyone kind of kept to themselves, but after a long period of time they got to know each other and it was good. We became friends.
Not only in school, but like outside of school, we start hanging out, and then for other subjects as well, we start having our study groups and stuff.
Students have reported to me that they've used their tag groups to brainstorm ideas for essays. They've used each other to help edit their essays when they're completed. The groups have also formed SWAT groups, when they're swatting for final exams.
We've started up a Facebook group just for our group, and we'll throw around other ideas around the course, or how are you going on your essay, or how are you going on this particular part of the course that isn't related to the tag group. And in a similar fashion, people will text message each other out information if one member of the group isn't there.
I've also talked to students who have gone on into the undergrad studies and have kept in contact with people they did their tutorial assignment groups with. Yeah, so there seems to be a very good thing, both social and academic support coming out of these relationships that come up in the groups.
The first assignment that the students are introduced to is designing an alien culture. And in designing an alien culture, they are using concepts that are fundamental to anthropology and sociology, such as what is culture, what is society, what is social organisation. And what we asked them to do was link this to the alien culture, link it to, ultimately, the culture's toileting habits. So they had to link everything in terms of society, in terms of social organisation, in terms of things like enculturation, learning your culture, to toileting habits. And that was kind of a fun way of playing with these concepts.
We were presented with our second assignment with a really interesting and challenging proposition that we make a tourist style ad for Wellington or New Zealand. We chose to do a video for our assignment, and it was based around the mundane, everyday aspects of the city or the country, and we had to present those as if they were the key elements that you would find in a tourism video.
Welcome to Wellington!
It went from brainstorming everything to script writing. When we had our script sorted, we came up with a timetable. So once we figured out who could be where, we met together for an hour before we went out filming and just kind of plotted out where we wanted to go. And then we just very systematically drove around the city, filmed, came back to university, made sure we had everything, and then we just repeated it the next day.
we were really interested in the interplay between this idea of symbolism and mundane ritual in the Wellington city, and we felt like the best way to put across these key aspects of our assignment work and our classwork was to visually represent it. But a lot of what we did visually in the video was also backed up with some pretty hardcore written work as well.
With the last one, with the tourism, where you could like break down something that you really knew, that was really enjoyable because it was like a common ground, something that you understood and experienced daily. It was so much easier to write about and understand, so that was beneficial, being able to work on like the familiar rather than like the unfamiliar, which when starting a new course you think like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to know anything about this.
So I've just recently created a new tutorial assignment for my class where I've asked them to take a pre-existing celebrity family and put a sociological analysis on this family. So I want these concepts that are kind of a little bit knotty and a little bit cumbersome for students to first deal with, to apply them to this example that they already know.
One of the key dynamics of the tag group assignments is that they're linked very directly to the concepts, but you can play with them. And it gives students confidence in the concept.
If it was boring, standard stuff, everyone would lose focus, and whereas the creative side of it sort of made everyone think outside the square.
I don't find myself a very creative person. I'm more of, I don't know, I'm not very creative, but I find that there's always someone in the group that is, and then once someone starts giving off ideas, then other people's ideas kind of stem from that, and then, you know, the creativeness starts flowing.
It really creates a connection between the concepts and engaging in a creative way, in the sense that because they try to be creative and come up with something innovative that is going to kind of show off their skills within the group, it forces them to understand those concepts correctly.
In our last tag assignment, we got too deep into the creative side of it and didn't tie in enough ideas. So instead of concentrating more on making sure that we were on track with the things that we'd learned and tying in the readings, we went off and went fully into the creative side.
It's very easy for students to get carried away with the creative aspects, drawing aliens, making videos, that sort of thing. So it's really incumbent upon the tutor to make sure that they guide them and keep them directing towards hitting those key marks in terms of academic concepts, embedded in their creativity.
I think creative learning is good because everyone has a different form of creativity, and when 4 minds put one thing together, you know, the world is yours. It's massive.
Working in a group environment, I think that's really helpful to the way that I learn. I mean, bouncing ideas off people is quite important. I find you come out with ideas that you didn't initially have. But at the same time, it can be difficult as well if you have people who aren't necessarily contributing fully, because then of course you bounce ideas off and they don't bounce back.
You get people who just sit there and just don't talk the whole time, and then suddenly before we present, they're like, oh, so what am I doing? And it's like, oh, it gets pretty frustrating sometimes.
The worst thing was to hear from the majority of the students the word whatever. I don't really care.
On occasion, I had students come to me and say that they had a problem with one member of their group freeloading, but oftentimes that dynamic tended to resolve itself because the groups tended to be self-policing.
Either those freeloaders are brought into the group and start performing and engaging in very constructive ways, or students step up and take a leadership role and sort of overcome that fear of freeloaders. They kind of realise if they put the effort into the tag groups, they get the reward, irrespective of whether they have people walking beside them or people not turning up.
Group work is good. Even though I personally don't like it, I think it's a good thing to get used to, because I do think in the future I'll have to be put in the situations where even if I don't like the people, I have to get on with it anyway.
We're always encountering group work also at university. So if you build up those skills
now you will be really good at dealing with people later on in your degree when actually those grades can be quite definitive for you?
The concern for students was that freeloaders were going to get the same marks as them. So we made a refinement on that. Basically now what happens is that students keep a percentage of their tutorial mark based on the number of tutorial assignments they actually participate in.
There's definitely a rivalry, I think, like especially getting those first marks back. Everyone was like comparing marks and like, oh, shame you didn't do as well. And there's also kind of an element of secrecy. Like I noticed that other groups don't want me finding out what their ideas are, or because they think that I'm going to steal them or something like that. So it's quite funny, and it's definitely also a motivator because now that we have this next assignment, and we didn't do as well as the other groups, it's a big motivation to do better than the other groups.
For the people who, like myself, who's not in a group with everyone's buy-in, you feel like you're being shortchanged, but then you see the other group who are doing so well and they're all thriving off it, like it's actually fun for them. You're sort of jealous. You're like, why can't I be in that group? And what are they doing that we don't do? And how do they have that? And how do we not have that?
As an older student within this process, it has somewhat led to me being a leader from the outset. Initially, people looked to me for not only basic information on how to do the assignment, but also to take a lead on the initiatives for the assignment. So whereby it was meant to be a shared creative process, they were looking to me to direct the flow of the creative output and then also drive the work process as we went through the assignment.
I think as an older member, you would sort of feel like you have this self-proclaimed role of, you know, being the supreme leader. But I think when people start to bring in different ideas, and sort of everyone seems to sort of balance it out, I think that they do learn to benefit from other people's thinking.
Yeah, having different age groups, like, well, for myself, being older than everyone else, that was a little bit of a frustration, but also a bit of an education. If I'm going to go to university, most of the people are going to be younger than me, and these groups are going to come up, and you've got to learn. Yeah, you've got to learn to work with a whole lot of different people.
Two of the primary goals in setting up the tag groups was to improve student retention and to improve student pass rates. From 2007 to 2008, we retained approximately 72% of students within social sciences and university preparation. So effectively we're losing 28%, didn't complete the course. They dropped out during the course or they didn't complete all the assignments. From 2009 to 2010, when we ran the tag assignments, we managed to increase retention rates up to 84%, which is an overall increase of 12%, which is actually quite significant. From 2007 to 2008, 51% of students who started CUP passed the course. So we're having 49% of the students failing, which for me was just unacceptable. From 2009 to 2010, after the introduction of the tag groups, student pass rates went up to 74%. Now, I was quite surprised that we had such a marked increase, so I took out the tag marks to see if we still retained students passing. I was kind of worried that the tag marks were skewing those results. And what we found, once you took out the tag marks, we still had approximately 68% of the students passing the course. So we've increased that by 14%, which I think is quite significant.
The students that were engaged in tag assignments actually went on to study anthropology and sociology at first year level, so they did move on to higher study. Because they had played with concepts, they felt more confident in using those concepts in kind of first year tutorials.
I used to have really big confidence issues getting up and talking in front of big groups of people or even small groups of people, but I think it's actually helped me. Like at school I'd always be really nervous and choke on my words and everything, but I do think this is really useful because we're up there with other people as well and everyone's in the same boat, so I think it's useful, yeah.